For me and most healthcare students, anatomy and physiology is a class that is required for you to get into your program and graduate. This class has a heavy weight in your program entry requirements. Because healthcare programs are so competitive, it is important to make an A in the course. Anatomy is divided up into two separate courses, Biology 2013 and Biology 2014. The first section of anatomy goes over basic anatomy, the cells of our body, tissues, skeletal and muscular system, and the nervous system. Anatomy 2 covers everything else from the endocrine system to the reproductive system. As you can tell, even just one semester of anatomy is a lot of information, and having to learn and know every part of a body system is a hard task. It is important to know how to study appropriately to be able to absorb the most information that you can. I'm going to teach you how to succeed and make an A in Anatomy 1. An important thing for you to remember when studying for this course is that you need to learn the information rather than just remembering it. You have to study the different chapters of anatomy different ways. For example, studying the cell cycle is going to require more of an understanding of the processes in comparison to the muscular and skeletal system, which is going to require you to memorize where everything is located. When you're studying the first chapter of the course, which is basic anatomy, it is important to memorize the terms because they will appear throughout the rest of both semesters. So what you need to do is make flashcards of the terms and study them until you have them memorized. After you study them, you need to practice using them in the proper context. The first chapter of anatomy will also have terms that relate to the planes of the body. For these, you need to look at the diagram in the book and practice which way the planes cut on your own body. Also, a good way to remember how the transverse plane cuts is to remember that transverse starts with T, and the transverse plane cuts like a T across your body. The second chapter deals with cellular processes. While studying for this chapter, you should make flashcards using the terms and memorize the terms. After that, you should apply the terms to the processes. Use the pictures in the book and relate them back to the book's description of the processes. If you aren't quite getting the information, or you just want to have a better understanding of the material, you should watch the crash course videos on YouTube. To do so, just go to YouTube in your internet browser and type in the cellular process you are looking for and crash course in the search bar. The man who is in the videos does a good job of breaking down the information in a way that is easier to understand. The third chapter of Anatomy 1 is over tissues. This chapter can be difficult to understand and study because you have to remember what the tissue looks like, its function, where it's located, and the special features of the tissue. The first thing you should do is read the chapter in your textbook in order to get a good first understanding of the material. There are 4 types of tissues, and each one has many different subtypes, so it is best if you make a table to keep them organized. You'll have to make a table for the epithelial, connective, muscle, and nervous tissue. Use their name as a heading. Under the name, you need to make 5 columns with the name of the tissue, the description, the function, the location, and a picture. For each tissue type, you will use the book to fill in the information. Then, because you can't cut the pictures out of the book, you need to go to Google and find a picture that closely matches the picture that's in the book. After you make your tables, you need to study them and make comparisons between the tissue types and the tissue subtypes. There's a crash course video on the tissues as well. You are now probably halfway through this semester, and the rest of the course will be discussing the skeleton, the muscular system, and the nervous system. Studying the bones, muscles, and nerves are very similar. For the first portion of the chapter, it talks in detail about the bone, muscle, and nerve cell type and how they work. For this portion, you have to study very similar to how you would study for the cellular part of the course, by memorizing the terms, then applying them to the picture and relating to the text. For this portion, the first thing you should do is read the text. After you read, you should take your lab book and rip out the pages with the diagrams that correspond to the ones in the textbook. With a dry erase marker, you should fill in the blanks on the diagram until you can fill it in without looking at your book. For the bone chapter, this is all you really need to do to study it. The muscles and nerves will take a little bit more of your time. The muscular system, you will also have to learn the origin and insertion of each muscle. To learn this, you need to make charts, much like studying for the tissues. You need to break down the muscles into regions of the body, including the skull, neck, and back, torso, arms, and legs. Use those as your headers, and then, under each category, you should have a column that says the muscle, origin, insertion, and from there, you should just fill out your charts with the information in the book, and study it with the diagrams in the book. This is an example of the muscle chart, and an example of the diagram of the muscles and how they attach and everything. The nervous system covers the span of 3 chapters, and like I said before, you need to study about the cell first, and then move to the anatomy of all of it. After you have studied that, it is time to go back and study what certain nerves control. The best way to study this is to look at the diagrams in your book. You can also make a list of the nerves and write out what their function is. This portion of anatomy is so large that you need to read the chapters many times. After you've studied each chapter, you should go and watch the crash course videos of the other sections. There will be multiple videos of each chapter, so you should watch all of them. And for example, this is the crash course videos of the muscle system. As you can see, there are 3 different videos for it. Some important things to remember when studying for this course is that you should start studying beforehand, and don't wait till the night before a test to start studying. You should take plenty of chapter practice tests. You can find them online by searching for the chapter and putting practice test after. Take multiple practice tests because they will show you the different ways your professor or teacher could ask the questions. Before a test, you should get plenty of rest. It is better to get a full night's sleep than to stay up all night cramming, because chances are you won't remember what you're studying for when you're loaded with caffeine. Make sure you take breaks. Studying for hours and hours on end is miserable. And according to MIT, the perfect study interval is 15 minutes studying, then 10 minutes with a break. And throughout the semester, you are going to encounter things that make sense and things that don't. Never be afraid to go to your teacher's office hours and ask them for assistance. Most of the time, one-on-one learning is the most beneficial. And finally, never give up. Your goal is way too important to give up on it because of one class or one test. Just work your hardest and study like I've described, and you can make an A.